I always say Division II lacrosse, it's like Harry Potter.
You're a wizard,
Everybody
Harry.
wants to kind of, shove it under the stairs and hate on it and forget about it, but every once in a while, there's a little bit of magic.
Right top of the box. Hands are free. Here's Lewis' the shot. He scores! He scores! Kyle Lewis has one for Adelphi.
I mean, look, we hear it all the time, right? D2 lacrosse, oh, it's not real. And honestly, with the way things are trending, that might actually kind of be true in a few years. It seems like every other year there's a historic blue blood program shutting down, right? Dowling, NYIT, Lindenwood. And most recently, one of the biggest hits to D2 lacrosse is Limestone shutting down, right? The Rock.
I will remember you.
And, if a program doesn't end up shutting down, it seems like they're leaving D2 in one way or another. St. Anselm just announced that they're going to Division 3. And let's not forget about all the guys who have gone to Division 1. Merrimack, Mercyhurst, Lemoyne, LIU. We're finding more and more that these programs would rather compete for a low-level conference title on the Division 1 scale than win it all on the Division 2 scale. Merrimack, Mercyhurst, Lemoyne, LIU are all teams that have won a national title on the Division 2 scale, and they don't want to continue that success. They'd rather have their program go to the next level, go D1. In fact, there's only been 16 teams to ever win Division 2 national titles. 7 of them have made the jump to go D1, 3 have gone D3, and 3 have shut down their program entirely, leaving only 3 schools left that currently sponsor a Division 2 team that have also won a national title. So these strong programs, the kind of flagship programs of Division 2, they don't stick around. And that's certainly not something that's healthy. The only 3 programs that are still around are Adelphi, Tampa, and Lenore-Rhyne. And honestly, these 3 programs are always getting compared to Division 1 teams. There's always a conversation of, are these teams gonna go D1? These teams have facilities that are as good as D1, or the teams are as good as D1.
Division II lacrosse is real, and the facilities out of this world. You might think this is a Division I program with their locker room, weight room, and
whereas if you look at on the D3 circuit, nobody's talking about a school like Wesleyan is gonna go D1 because they're perfectly happy being a D3 school with great academics, with a great atmosphere that are able to dominate on the Division 3 scale. And when these top programs are constantly having issues and constantly leaving, it tells us one thing. Division II lacrosse is hurting bad. But why? These are usually regional, small, private schools that are pretty easy to get into, and they often have a pretty difficult time retaining students because, there's issues with culture, there's issues with the academics of the university, or it's just a commuter school. The schools tend to over-recruit on the lacrosse side, and you'll see a lot of guys actually leaving Division II after their freshman year. It happens pretty often. So we typically see that among lacrosse schools with very talented teams, they're usually pretty prestigious universities. So if you look at the Lax Numbers website for the top 25 schools on the 2023 season, and we run the numbers, we see that Division I schools are highly selective. They have, on average, a 27% acceptance rate and a 90% graduation rate. So these are schools that are difficult to get into, and people tend to stay there 4 full years, and they graduate. These are schools like the Ivies, for instance, or UNC, or Duke. And you're gonna see a lot of these guys on Wall Street in the next few years.
Hello?
This is Tom.
Tom, how pleasure to meet you. This is Giuliano Massarelli. I was reaching out.
Division 3 schools follow the same trend. Of the top 25, there's a 46% acceptance rate and 86% graduation rate, well above the national average for both of those statistics. Division 2, however, doesn't follow this trend. Of the top 25 Division 2 lacrosse schools, we see an average acceptance rate of 73% and a graduation rate of 60%. Once again, like I said, these aren't terrible numbers, and a school with these numbers doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad school. Graduation rate and acceptance rate aren't everything, but it goes to show that Division 3 and Division 1 schools with really good lacrosse teams tend to be pretty rigorous academic institutions, while Division 2, it just isn't the same. They're run-of-the-mill, average schools. In fact, the most selective Division 2 school is Rollins College, with an acceptance rate of 40%. When we compare that to Division 1 and Division 3, we have Harvard and MIT with a 4% acceptance rate. These are huge flagship schools that, pretty much are household names at this point. Division 2, at the end of the day, these schools are not destinations. A lot of guys on these teams, you'll hear them say, if they weren't playing lacrosse, there's no chance they would be at this school. They'd rather be at an SEC school like Georgia or Alabama. Instead, they're at, Coker University in South Carolina, where there's 1,200 kids. Now, one of the main issues facing these Division II schools is there's no proper focus. Cornell and Tufts have really good lacrosse teams because people want to go there for the academics, and over time, they've attracted great talent. Schools like Penn State and Ohio State have really good lacrosse teams because while the academics are pretty good, people want to go there for the culture and for this big school atmosphere. And then you find schools like Adelphi or Lenore-Rhine. They have good lacrosse teams because of regional talent. Guys will stay home on Long Island and they'll go to Adelphi, and Lenore-Rhine can capture a lot of the talent that comes out of the South that's under-recruited. It's no wonder that Long Island-based schools like Dowling, NYIT, and Adelphi all have national championships because they scoop up all of the Long Island talent. And at the end of the day, athletics should not be the focus of your school if you're struggling to pay the bills. D3 schools don't need their athletics to be some sort of allure or revenue driver because they have some sort of foundation that their success is based off of that isn't athletics. Ultimately, these sports teams are just there to round out the university. But when you get to the Division II level, it feels like administration thinks that having a good lacrosse team is going to be the saving grace of the school. And this really isn't the case. I mean, look at Mars Hill University, for instance, in North Carolina. If you've never heard of it, you're probably not alone. They have an 80% acceptance rate, about 1,000 students, and only a 40% graduation rate. Yet they have 24 Division II sports teams. There's really no reason to be financing all of these teams when your university is struggling to get by. And enticing most of your students to come to your school by telling them they can be athletes and giving them a $3,000 scholarship isn't really going to help your 30% decline in enrollment in the last 10 years. Bruh. And there are so many schools that are like this. If you look at the board of Division II schools, you'll find 100 schools that you've never heard of with 800 to 1,500 students that have about a 50% graduation rate and can't retain kids or get them to enroll in the first place. And going Division I doesn't magically solve these problems either. I mean, look at Lindenwood, a top 10 Division II team that went Division I and almost immediately failed. It's almost mind-boggling to think that a transition like this was ever on the radar when the school's finances were so bad that they couldn't even stand to be D1 for more than a year or two. And schools like Mercyhurst and Queens College, who have gone Division I in the last few years, still have these issues. They have declining enrollment, bad finances, and they're struggling as a school. And I will say, to their credit, there is an overall trend of struggling enrollment to private schools. There's very few of these schools that are the exception to what's currently going on in the private school landscape.
Now let's take a look at the talent in D2 lacrosse. D2 lacrosse is often framed as this gap between D3 and D1, right? You get more practices, there's more skill, the guys are bigger, stronger, faster, better players than Division 3, but not quite as good as Division 1. Now, we know there's many exceptions to this. We see it all the time. There's D2 guys that could dominate at the D1 level, and there's D2 guys who stink and they should be on a Division 3 team or not even playing college lacrosse. But I digress. But honestly, I don't even really think it's a hot take anymore to say that the top 20 Division 3 schools would beat the top 20 Division 2 schools in a head-to-head matchup.
And I think that D1 is the older brother of D3, but I think D3 is the bigger brother of D2. I think D2 is the youngest.
I mean, look, of course, Tufts versus Adelphi is going to be a really good game, and the same goes for, say, Tampa versus Salisbury, but you can't convince me that Colorado Mesa University is going to blow the doors off of RPI. I just don't think it's going to happen. And honestly, after the top 20 Division II schools, things start to fall off a cliff. I mean, like, come on, some of these schools, these can't pop, like Young Harris University, Davis and Elkins. I've never even heard of that in my life. And with so many recent closures of schools, it's starting to feel like you just have to have a pulse to make it to the playoffs. Schools are getting into the NCAA tournament not because they're having these standout great years, but because there's just nobody to stop them. The North region, for instance, once you take out Lemoyne and Mercyhurst, the door is wide open for so many less talented schools that never have made it before to just kind of walk into playoffs. Now take Pace University in Westchester or Seton Hill. Before 2023, Pace University had made it to the NCAA tournament once, in 2017. And they had a great season that year. But in 2026, they just made it for the third consecutive year in a row. And that's not to take any credit away from them. They're a good team that's been having a lot of success and been recruiting well, but St. Anselm is going to leave the North next year, and the talent is really starting to dry up at that point. But anyway, I've done enough yapping. Let's talk to legendary coach Coach Storrier, who was at the helm of the Limestone men's lacrosse team when they figured out their program was going to get shut down along with the entire school. He was 3-time SAC Coach of the Year, 2-time National Assistant Coach of the Year, and has been inducted into the JUCO Hall of Fame as a player. And now he's the head coach at St. Bonaventure's University in New York, their Division I. It's safe to say this guy's been around the sport. He definitely has some insight, so I got to sit down with him and I got to pick his brain a little bit about what's going on in Division II lacrosse and what his thoughts are. What do you think one of the biggest issues is facing Division II schools?
I think a lot of schools, they'll get a president or leader in there, and they want to make it what they think it should be. They make poor decisions, and a lot of the decisions in colleges revolves around money. Limestone was a wonderful institution that had great people. And I'm assuming Dowling was the same. And NYIT, obviously, with their lacrosse program, I know players who played at both schools well, and they love their time there. Get a new leader in, and they want to make it something that it's not, to justify their own ego. That really is what gets in the way, and takes away from just what a great place that they are.
A lot of schools will end up, trying to go Division I, and they do. A lot of these schools end up having enrollment issues and financial issues that they're having. So, would you say that's kind of exactly like the direct cause of that almost?
I think when you're label yourself as a Division I school, it will boost your profile. Will it give you any more students, more that'll really build you new libraries, student centers, and stadiums? But it could certainly help, and you're going to get more revenue from the NCAA based on being that school. But you're also going to put yourself in a position where you're a bottom feeder, unless you really ramp up your budget, and your ability to go out and attract Division I student athletes because of your facilities, because of your academic profile.
My last question for you here. So obviously you played at Limestone. I feel like the golden age of D2 was almost 10, 15 years ago. Do you notice there's any differences from back in the day versus now with these schools?
I think there's definitely more parity. When I played, if you were the number 6 through 10 ranked team, you probably had very little chance to beat one of those top 5 teams. Sometimes Limestone was in that, sometimes we weren't, right? I think now, you still have your top 7, 8, and they might be able to get tripped up by 9 through 12, 9 through 15 maybe, but there's really levels to it, but those levels have expanded, and I think that's all across the sport of lacrosse. Now being in Division I, you can see that, right? There's a couple Ivy League schools every year that are at that top level. Then you have the ACC, the Big Ten, and fortunately for us in the A10, you have Richmond, who's kind of in that top level right now. But so there is more parity, but there certainly is, there are levels to it, and I think Division II is certainly the same. Right, there are some incredible institutions in the country, right? When you talk about the Ivies and the NESCACs, and once you get not into those higher level academic institutions, to say that you were a part of a athletic team for 4 years and you graduated and you have this degree and this part, it's almost all the same. I hesitate to say it doesn't matter. If you're not in one of those top level, it's almost all the same. But if you're in Charlotte, they don't know what NYIT is, but they know what Wingate is, so that'll hold a lot of water. So I think the growth has been awesome, and I think the academics is certainly there's some really good academic institutions in Division II.
I think that's all I have for you today. I really appreciate you coming on with me. I definitely value your opinion on this. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing it. I'm excited to see the final product. So send it out.
Now, the hard pill to swallow here is it just doesn't seem like these institutions have the best interests of the players in mind. I think Coach Storrier brings up a really refreshing point. The overall growth of lacrosse is not outpaced by the shrinkage of Division II lacrosse. We still have a lot of talent coming into the game, a lot of players that are able to play at the next level and are offered opportunities by Division II institutions to play at the next level and to live out their dream of playing college lacrosse. It's really hard to have any beef with that. Have fun, make friends, and make memories that are going to last a lifetime. Is Division II lacrosse going to be around in the next 10, 20 years? It's too close to say at the moment. But what I can say is the people closest to the game, the players and the coaches, like Coach Storrier, seem to have the best interest of the sport in mind. And even though administration at some of these schools doesn't quite reflect that, it's the best we could do. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments.